So Vader in the first one was like that was a big surprise. That was definitely something that got kept carefully under wraps. And this time around, it was like still, a surprise, but it's also, we weren't not expecting him, I guess. Like it's kind of more of a thing. But, you'd already done Vader once. The one that I thought felt like, oh, hell yeah, we get to do this was the Rancor.
Right.
That felt like just like, who got assigned the Rancor? Like, how were people fighting over it? Like, what was it like making such like an iconic monster? Because that is a Star Wars boss fight,
Yeah, the Rancor was difficult. Actually, this is something that we wanted to have in the first game. Like, we're talking about things that like we didn't make it into the first game, and we wanted to have a Rancor. And it was a big conversation back and forth with Lucasfilm. And with anything, they want to make sure that like the story of the game like earns it. And that was a conversation that went on until we shipped, and it never got in the game. But we continued the conversation going. We had some of our, we made a rough model. We rigged it, had our combat designers start to sketch out fights. And as the conversation was going on, we had a Milestone Summit review meeting with Lucasfilm. And we said, hey, check this out. And just seeing it like come to life, I think was enough to kind of sell it. And like, little details that we had in there, like the bone. And, it's the other thing too is it's kind of unexpected because of where it happens in the game. It's not part of the main story. You can miss it. There's multiple other encounters later on in the game as well too. So for such a big feature, this is an example of us trying to like, have a high dollar moment that's off the main path.
Yeah, that's immediately, that made me feel like it reminded me of FromSoft games. There's
exactly.
faith that the players are going to find this thing, and it's such a huge payoff to find it.
And we talk about Ogdo. I mean, like this was basically Survivor's version of like, because Ogdo was early in the game on the first one. So yeah, I mean, it's we're really happy with the way it came together.
I mean, the bone thing you mentioned is really funny because I've heard multiple people talking about how they didn't realize that's what you were supposed to do. And I was like, you should check out this great walkthrough video called Return of the Jedi. It tells you exactly what to do. Was that like always part of the plan? Like you got to throw a bone in his mouth. Like that's got to be.
I don't remember how that one came up. I just think it was probably the combat design team having fun. And, I actually stumbled upon it one time when I was playing the game. That's what's so much fun about working on something that's so big and with so many talented people is that there's things that like surprise me when I'm playing the game that like nobody ever talked to me about or anything like that. And like, I mean, I think one of my favorites is Rick the door technician.
Yes, I was hoping we were able to talk about that.
Yes.
I literally like had to put the controller down because I was laughing, crying so hard when Rick the door technician came running at me, screaming, just.
That's like the inverse of like having the faith that players will find this really cool giant boss, being okay with something that ridiculous being front and center in a AAA game. Like I was cackling.
I think it's best. That's for me. That is best boss fight of 2023 so far. Like I just like literally like force grabbed him and held him up. He was like, "What? What's going on?" I was like, "Oh my goodness!"
Yeah. And that was one of those moments for me. Is like I didn't know what was in the game, and there's that brutal fight that you have like kind of on the base of the hangar that goes on and on and on, several waves. What we wanted is we wanted everybody's health bar to add a sliver. And what we saw in the focus test, and then since the game is shipped, most people got there with like barely any health left, and they see this boss bar come up, and they're like, "Holy hell, what is this?" I remember during when we do the focus tests, we actually have a camera on the player as they're playing the game, so we can kind of see what their reactions are for different parts. And one of the guys, it was priceless, that Rick the door technician starts coming towards him. And then he goes up and he kind of runs backwards for a minute. And he's trying to size up what's going on here. And then he goes in and just takes him down with one hit. And the guy, like, we just have a camera right on his face. And he starts cracking up and he falls out of his chair. And then next time we see him, he's just kind of walking around in the space that he was in, just like, just cracking up, and he couldn't believe what he had just experienced. It's when you can make a game and it elicits that kind of response.
That was like the best spoiler because you can't spoil a punchline. Like it's one thing for a plot twist, like the good guy's a bad guy. Like we've had that in Star Wars. Like that's not really that unexpected. But like to be like, don't give away this amazing bit. It's so funny. Like it's a really funny game. Like it's
Yes.
interesting because it's really dark. Like that's kind of expected of like a Star Wars sequel, but it also has a amazing sense of humor. You've got battle droids, admiring beautiful landscapes.
Yep.
No one will ever pull me off this cliff.
And then if you turn around, there's actually a rainbow over there. I don't know if you noticed that. If you turn and look at what that battle droid was looking at, there's a rainbow and like one of those like R3 icons that Cal will comment. He's like, oh yeah, it is a pretty good view.
Oh my god.
Is there any other? Yeah, are there any other? There's like NPC like throwaway lines that like sticks out as a favorite for you?
Just like off the top of my head, and I can't think of anything right now. There's so many of them, but like I do. To your point, yes, there's humor in the game. I think that is part of Star Wars. Like it's part of Star Wars DNA. We have to make sure that we get that right. And humor is really difficult to write, and it's a testament to our writing team, like that we were able to pull it off. And a lot of it happens in those moments that are like ambient. You're not expecting it. It's not a moment. It's like, oh, here's a cutscene. I'm going to sit down and focus. It's just kind of like, we have to bring a little bit of. The game can't always be dark. You have to have a little like moments of levity to kind of like, so when the dark parts happen, they really, you feel that contrast and it sets in. So it's that we can be light like that, I think is, it's fun. It's the bottom line. It's fun. And it's nice, on our Slack channel at work, like people finding things and posting videos and there's thousands and thousands of blinds and like everybody's experiencing something a little bit different. And we were talking about earlier, it's like, I don't know everything that's in that game.
Yeah.
And the director, because it's massive.
There's so much stuff.